Thank you very much, Dr. Sills. Appreciate your welcome. Thank you and good afternoon to all the participants in the e-conference right now. On behalf of Mr. Holt and myself, I want to thank the NTA, National Training Agency, for the opportunity to speak on the topic of virtual and augmented training. This is a unique scenario in a TVET context, and we will share with you the experience of the NESC, the experience the NESC has had in augmenting its delivery due to the restrictions imposed as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Quite aptly, our implementation strategy was tagged Muzzling COVID-19. Let me first though invite Mr. Rodney Holt to share his thoughts on the topic virtual and augmented training. Hi Rod, are you there?
I am. Can you get my audio coming in clear?
Yes, it is.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you. It's always a great opportunity to connect with global leaders on this important topic. And thank you to our partners at the National Energy Skills Center for inviting us to participate today. So I'm very passionate about digital learning in the TVET model. Myself and my colleagues here at Red Deer College and the School of Trades and Technology and the School of Education over the last number of years have been passionately working towards developing new and alternative pathways for TVET learners to engage in online learning, to engage in learning in their homes, in remote locations, to embed and incorporate new technologies that allow learners to control and to take ownership of their learning and become self-directed learners. And you know, as we're all facing a global pandemic of COVID-19, it's drastically forced our hand to make stronger preparations and stronger propositions to make this move forward a little bit further. I think really the most important things that we've learned and that we focus on is preparing a student to be preparing students and increasing their digital literacy. The presenter before us did an amazing job talking about, you know, individuals' access to technology, use of tools, the support of students through the digital learning platforms, which is phenomenal and a great resource. But I think it's important for us to remember that traditionally, TVET training and the students who go through this program are conditioned to be taught, and they're conditioned to learn in environments where they're sitting face to face in front of instructors who walk them through the theoretical competencies and theoretical knowledge, and then transition into a shop or into a learning environment where they get to walk through hands-on skills. And when we flip the classroom and shift it into a digital environment, the students now have to own the responsibility to be engaged as a learner, as opposed to being a passive learner. And so it's really important that institutions and instructors that we develop and we're intentional about improving the digital literacy for those individuals. And I think, you know, the last point I'll make before I turn it back to Mr. Toney is we have an abundance amount of tools available to us as training institutions, whether it's Blackboard, Moodle, Adobe Connect, Google Classroom, Microsoft Teams, and all of these online learning platforms have tremendous amount of tools for us to be able to use to enhance the learning. And sometimes that vast array of choices is tempting for us to incorporate lots of things that can be a learning distraction. And so we have to be really intentional about the number of tools and the number of technologies that we introduce in the learning environment so that the tool is not a distraction from learning. And we have to be really intentional that each online learning activity we create, that there is an opportunity for the students to be engaged and for the students to then show and demonstrate their understanding, their learning, to be able to pull forward. The greatest advantage to online learning is our ability to assess in small microbyte sections through the learning experience. Online learning is amazing for us to check in more regularly with students than in a traditional face-to-face classroom. The last point is digital learning is a huge factor for the administration of an institution. it's an investment. It's an investment in the technology, but it's also an investment in the development of our staff, our instructors, and our support systems. And so the decision to move into that online environment cannot be a single initiative held by one individual. It has to be an institutionally shared passion so that the whole organization can support that transformation.
Thank you, Rod. And just moving forward, I'm happy with where Rod finished off, because as an institution, NESC, as we were thrust into this new environment, we really relied on the support of Red Deer College, our training partner, to be able to move our program forward in the online environment. And when we started off, the stay-at-home order proved to be actually a hectic time in our delivery, because we were just at the end, or towards the middle actually, of our second trimester. And as the first week passed, and we saw the uncertainty in terms of how long we would be out of training, we realized we had to devise a plan for online learning within the institution. With the focus of our training being competence development, however, workshop time is necessary. So it meant that we had, by introducing online training, we were really pushing ourselves into the blended learning environment. And our aims were speaking very clearly to what we wanted to achieve. And the first was to continue the education and development of our students while they were at home due to the COVID restrictions. Because once the students were at home, we needed to make sure that they were engaged in something meaningful for when they returned to classes. Secondly, we looked at our ICT resources, and we wanted to capitalize on the development of those resources through online training, through building learning capacity at the institution. And we involved our staff, the instructors, and students in this process. We had to actually maximize the use of the time. As I said before, we were unsure of whether or not we would be out till April, we'll be out till June, or we'll be out till September. So we really wanted to make maximum use of that time at home. And most importantly, we had to prepare our students for competence development in the workshop for when they return. So at the moment, we're thinking September, but we had to do that through front-loading the theoretical concepts that would normally be taught in the face-to-face environment. And within any institution, going into something new, we really had to look at what restrictions we would face in that time. And for us, and the most important part of it would have been the insufficient courseware in that digital format. We've actually spent 20 years in this industry, but we've been building up content, but the content is really printed content. It's not content in a digital format. Anything that's in a digital format is a little bit unstructured. So having not done online training before, we didn't really build enough of that content up. The low digital literacy levels of our students and faculty. You know, people may think that because of social media, all students are actually digitally literate, but that's far from the case. While you may be able to use WhatsApp, you may be able to use Instagram, it does not necessarily translate into the overall use of technology. So we had to look at that. We looked at the access to digital devices by both students and faculty, because as I said, students were not accustomed to being online, and most students have a cell phone. But beyond a cell phone, in terms of a tablet or a laptop or any other device that would allow them to log on or to go online for online classes, a lot of students did not have access, and they did not even have access to the internet. And it was similar for some members of our faculty as well. All of this really looked at the inexperience of students and faculty in an online learning environment. So that even though we may think that we are online all the time, learning in an online environment is very, very different. NESC did possess Microsoft Teams, but we had not yet operationalized it from the standpoint of online learning. And of course, where students are at home, there are certain pressures that would involve teaching and learning. And it's as simple as finding a quiet space to study at home, to just finding something else to do while at home and not really being interested in teaching and learning. But with all of that, we looked at our resources. And I must give credence to the work put out by our instructors and our staff in this regard. As I said before, we did have Microsoft Teams and get a license for Microsoft Teams in terms of using it for online training delivery. So that was one of the positives and one of the resources that we already possessed. All of our students had email addresses, and those email addresses we would use as the user accounts to access Microsoft Teams. We already were doing online exams. So our exams are at the end of each course, and are done with students logging with their credentials and logging into the RDC website, because they host our exams for us through Blackboard. So our students were accustomed to logging in and putting in their credentials and being able to access content online from that perspective. And we have a network infrastructure, and I think every organization at this time has looked at the IT department quite differently, because before you may have been criticizing and complaining about the IT department, but our IT department really did step up to the plate, and they allowed us, we had access, we had remote access, and all of the necessary network resources were made available. And as I said, we had experienced IT professionals throughout our organization. We do have an IT program as well. So our instructors in the IT program were able to assist in terms of bringing us on in online delivery. And once again, we had RDC, whose expertise was really important in guiding us towards implementation. And I would just like to reintroduce Mr. Holt to speak a little bit about that expertise that RDC was able to provide for us.
Yeah, so, you know, we're really excited about our continued affiliation partnership with NESC and our trades professional certificate. You know, some of the things that we work with at NESC is to take the learnings that we have with online testing, with online delivery, and allowing students to have freer access into learning content today, especially in a COVID-19 world. I think one of the things that we're really proud of is by allowing students to challenge exams and write exams at a time that's available to them, on a device that's available to them, enables them to complete the exam when they're ready. And, you know, our traditional methods in TVET training is we go through a long period of learning, and then you do an assessment at the end of the exam. And some of the content and learnings that the student had gone through is pretty old and outdated. It may be several weeks or even months ago. Our work with NESC has allowed their students, and well, I will say our students, because it's a dual credentialed program, to be able to challenge assessments and exams at the conclusion of their learning, really allowing them to demonstrate what they know at the time. And it's a confirmation of what does a student know versus what don't they know. And I think that's really important as educators, is that we're creating assessments that really allow the student to demonstrate their knowledge, and it really allows them to show and express what they've learned, as opposed to what maybe they aren't able to express. And we know traditional forms of assessment aren't very successful. Traditional forms of multiple choice exams are not true measures of assessment. In fact, it's the lowest form of assessment. And the new methods of assessment that we're using with NESC through online testing, being innovative and creative, allow those students to feel confident, allow them to express what they know, and allow them to move forward. I think one of the things I'm really proud of is the adoption of the technology and the strategies of the NESC faculty. They are examples of lifelong learners. They're showing the example to their students that learning doesn't stop at the end of the program, that they're going to continue to reinvest in their knowledge on a continuous basis as they go forward in their careers. And the programs that we've set up and that we're partnering with NESC really prepare the future learners in a TVET world to have continuous learning and continuous improvement throughout their academic careers, but also through their professional work lives.
Thanks, Rod. So in terms of us bringing the online program into fruition, we had to look at a specific approach. And the first thing we did at the NESC would have been to develop and agree on a training framework. And this was done through our teaching and curriculum department with the work of the SMEs, our subject matter experts, and the faculty, the instructors, to develop a framework, to develop and agree on a framework that we would use to take the implementation forward. Next would be to ascertain the readiness of our students to participate in online delivery. Because as I mentioned, students going home, a lot of students got involved in other activities. We had to look at the internet access. We had to look at the devices that they would have had and whether or not they would be able to participate in online training. We moved then to the fact of preparing the faculty and staff for online delivery, because it's not just about the instructors. It's also about the administration, those that prepare the exams, those that prepare the rooms, the IT infrastructure to get things done. So we had to prepare the faculty and staff for online delivery. We also looked at filtering the course content to identify learning objectives in two parts. The first was really to look at the online content. What will we deliver online? And our approach to this was to deliver theoretical concepts online, everything that would prepare the student for when they return to the workshop. And then we looked at what needed to be done at the campus, the competence development activities that needed to be done. So this was twofold. So you had to actually filter the content. You had to look at, okay, when students get into training down at the end to develop that competence that we say that they're going to go out into the industry with, how am I going to prepare them for that? So we looked at the various objectives throughout our curriculum and said, okay, these concepts, these objectives could be delivered online. So anything to do with the science, for example, of welding, we look at the science of welding first. So that once the students would have covered an area like that and they understand how to apply that science, then you take them into the workshop and you apply. So that was the approach in terms of the content. We looked at developing the learning content and the formative assessments at that particular point in time. So having identified the objectives to be delivered, we now had to build that digital content to get things going. And of course, once all this is wrapped in a nice little bow, you have to then communicate the information to the students. So we developed our schedule for delivery and gave information to our students in that when they would come online, what days, what times, what they would actually be doing in those online classes. Once everything got going, you must monitor and evaluate. NESC really believes in that PDCA format. We plan, do, check, and act. That is actually how our procedures are built. So we then move into that phase of monitoring and evaluation against what we expected to happen against the learning outcomes. And what you're going to see here is actually what our framework looks like. And it may look a little bit complicated on the screen, so I hope everyone is seeing it okay. And we started off looking at our teaching and curriculum department. The aim basically was to design the curriculum and the courseware for use in that online environment. So we looked at our curriculum design and the material and started planning how we were going to treat with this particular material going forward. This process, and you will see the box in red, is led by our SMEs, our subject matter experts, who would coordinate the putting together of the classes, they would coordinate the materials. So all teaching and learning material actually came to them for them to approve because we wanted to standardize it across the board. Being the first time that we were delivering online, it was really important that the material was approved material to go forward and cover the objectives that we wanted covered in the classes. We broke up our classes into actual groups of 20, with each e-tutor having a group of students to focus on. In some cases, it went a little bit over. Some cases, it would have gone underneath. However, we really wanted to make sure that students had access to an instructor who could give them that meaningful feedback that they would have needed, who would actually put across the class activities, the one who would administer that formative assessment and give the feedback. The students had a particular role to play, and their role was to really attend and to participate and prepare for classes and ensure that they would have done the assessments. It was really a team approach because if you look at our model, every single department that is involved in teaching and learning is represented on the model. So at the campus level, persons at the campus were responsible for registering students. If a student had an issue in terms of the email account, gaining access, having trouble participating, they didn't have a device to log on, they had challenges with internet access, we provided solutions to those students. And the various other departments, my department, the testing department, made available all assessments that needed to be done. Student support gave guidance to those students who were challenged in getting on, who may have had other issues resulted that would have prevented them from being able to log into the classes. They dealt with that. And our records department ensured that everyone knew where they stood at the particular point in time. I think we were really successful using this model and getting our online training going. Once the model was in place, then we actually had to look at the content. And in terms of the content, the first stage for us was getting our instructors trained. You have to actually have persons understanding the software, one, that they're going to use, recognizing what the pedagogical approaches needed to survive in an online environment were. So we went through a really long process of training our instructors in online delivery, in assessment, and looking at Microsoft Teams and the various features of Microsoft Teams that they could use. So they could use a quiz, they could use the discussion board, different things. So even if they wanted to do collaborative work, how do you do collaborative work using Microsoft Teams? All of this would have been covered in our training sessions. Once we'd have gotten past that stage, then we really needed to get to the development. We recognize that it is important to have enough formative assessment built into your program once it's online. Because in the classroom environment, it may seem a little bit different, but in an online environment, persons could be present and not present. So it was really important to have that formative assessment there to see that students were participating and to give feedback, as well as the courseware that we developed. As I mentioned earlier, we didn't have much digital content, so a lot of that had to be put together at that stage 2. Stage 3 involved the schedule, that planning schedule and that training schedule, and we did it in 2-week stints. So it would not have been too much at one point in time for any particular group of instructors to get done. So we pulled together every 2 weeks, they would put together a schedule of what was going to be delivered and when. As I mentioned before, we are a plan, do, check, act organization. So we monitored the delivery across all the campuses by every instructor. Each one of our classes has been recorded, and if it's not reviewed in lifetime, it's actually reviewed post the class. Again, we could not just jump into blended delivery. So the first thing we would have did, we had to pilot a group. And in piloting that group, we looked at courses that would have been completed in the previous trimester, and we did review classes for that particular group. That kind of gave us an understanding of what the level of participation would be in those classes and gave us an opportunity to tweak some of the things that we were doing. Once that was settled, we moved into our second phase, which started in May, which was online delivery of our new content. So the newly designed content was put out, students were allowed now to come in and experience NESC's new blended style of delivery. And once that comes to an end, probably towards the end of August, we're then going to bring our students back in. As I said, we're preparing them for competence development. So as they come in, now they're going to actually head back into the workshops and do what they really came to do, which is to develop the skills and competence needed for the workforce. All that will culminate, of course, in our exams and competency assessment going forward. As I mentioned, we did do a lot of surveys. We looked at our students and we wanted to make sure that our students were ready to participate. And these are just a few of the areas that we looked at. The first would have been the internet access of our students, and most students had home Wi-Fi. So that gave us the impetus to move forward. They also had the NESC account, but some of them had not yet accessed that account. So we had to get an idea of, okay, how many students can go online? And then we created the means by which they could actually access the training. Looked as well as what device would they use. And as I mentioned to you, everybody had a smartphone. So if you look down there, you'll see smartphone was the highest number of students had a smartphone that they would actually use to access the training. This influenced the kind of presentations that we would put in the framework and in the delivery. We had to put presentations that the students could actually view on their smartphone. If you look at the class time, most students were free from 9 to 12. I don't know if that's just before lunch, so everybody was saying just before lunch we're going to be okay. Just after breakfast, before lunch. So most students prefer the time from 9 to 12, but there were others who had different times that they wanted, and we had to be cognizant of the fact that a lot of these students started working. So we moved classes around depending on the group of students that we had. Our heavy equipment program, for some reason, every student in heavy equipment was working. So the instructor, he moved his class time and he was actually delivering classes from 8 to 10 every night. Yeah. Once we would have gotten that first part done and got students in training, after the phase 1, we wanted to get some feedback from our students in terms of how was the training going? Were you able to participate in that type of thing? And were you able to use Microsoft Teams? And most students agreed that they were. There were students with challenges, and we worked towards addressing those challenges for those students. We look at the time of our classes. We had to actually do synchronous teaching. It would have been better for us if we could have done asynchronous. However, based on the native students that we had, the inexperience of our students, we did not want to leave things to chance. So we wanted to cover everything that we could cover in a synchronous environment. However, The recordings of these sessions made the classes available for students to go back in and look at those classes afterwards. This is new for not just the faculty and the students, but everyone at the NESC. And we really wanted to find out how the students adjusted. And there were many students who had some challenges, and I said before, our student affairs department was able to connect with those students and see how they could help them adjust. Focusing class is also an issue. A lot of students would log in, they're there, they've logged in, but they're not necessarily there. So that we wanted to consider how do our students participate in class, what was their level of focus. This was a really tough road, getting everything done, but I'm really proud of the institution. I'm especially proud of the instructors, the faculty, the way they would have come together and created that learning community to get this job done. Over the period, 48 of our instructors were trained in online delivery and assessment methods. We commenced our online delivery within 2 weeks of stay at home. And I think that's phenomenal for the institution. We'd never done online delivery before. 707 of our students across 8 programs in 8 campuses were initiated for online training. They had access, the resources were there for them to log in and to participate in the training. This meant for us 5,384. Yes, we actually logged the number of online training hours that we've done from May to July across, and we've completed actually 3 courses in each one of our programs, both year 1 and year 2. We've seen a participation rate of 62%. It's a number that we really wanted closer to 100%, and we're working with our students to get them online. We've monitored 100% of our online delivery courses. I keep saying NESC is a plan, do, check, act organization. So anything that we're going to implement, we definitely want to make sure that we've done it, we've planned it, we've actually done what we say we're going to do, we monitor, and once we've gotten the evidence from the monitoring and the evaluation, we're going to act on those changes that we need to make. How are we going to move forward in this particular realm? Well, we have to look at our approach and look at the effectiveness of our approach. Are there things that we can do differently? And I'm sure as we evaluate, we're going to find things that we can change. We're working with RDC towards the continued development of our faculty and their competence in the virtual teaching and learning approaches. And we're now looking at our policies. How do we then redesign institutional policies, look at our quality guidelines, and see how they can now support this new blended approach? We're seeking additional sources, and I keep hearing open source mentioned a lot. Even though it says open source, it's quite challenging if you look at some of the programs that we do to access information in support of of TVET programs online. It's not really that simple. If you look at a program like welding, mechanical maintenance, fabrication, in those contexts, a lot of the information is really geared towards engineering. So for us, it's a lot of building material, but we are open to open source information that is available. And of course, we will reinforce those professional learning communities within our organization. We recognize the importance of learning communities, especially through this development phase and this implementation phase that we would have gone through. I think it's really important for all learning institutions, not just TVET, to develop those professional learning communities at their institution. At this point, I just want to invite Mr. Holt to come back in and give his closing comments.
Thanks, Kofi. I think you've done a really excellent job in the last 3 months of what I'd call a disruptive nature to move into an online environment. And we're really proud of the work that your team's done. We're really proud to continue to work with NESC on these challenges and share what we do here at Red Deer College. I think, some of the closing thoughts that I have on your last slide here and, some of the things that we're doing and we're seeing going forward is when we seek additional resources for online learning and the opportunities to infuse digital technology into the curriculum, there is a really wide spectrum available content or resources that both learners and instructors can use. It's our job as an institution to measure the quality of those online resources. We had an experience with one of our online programs where we challenged students themselves to actually seek out content online and post and share the content that they have found that met a learning outcome. And you can imagine all the students have went to YouTube and done a Google search and posted all of this content online. And they did a really good job of it. But it was a great opportunity for the faculty member then to help them understand the why some of their examples were effective and on point, and where some of them where the content didn't actually meet the learning outcomes. And so it was an opportunity to further the cognitive understanding of the students of the why behind the learning outcomes and help them assess good examples versus inappropriate examples. I think the future of technical and vocational training is twofold. Online learning enables us to prepare and to maximize the time that the students will do in the shop or the lab when they return to campus. Working online helps us understand the why, it helps us understand the theoretical knowledge, and it gives us an opportunity to maximize our time and effort for that practical hands-on tool. I don't believe the future enables us to completely deliver technical and vocational training in an online environment, but it does help us to create new models that maximizes the time the students have with their hands on the tools, their hands working in live practical applications. But most importantly, it helps us help the student have a better understanding of what they're doing and why they're doing it, so that when they get to the employer, they are a critical thinker, they're a problem solver, they're an effective communicator, and they have a passion for learning and a passion for seeking out new solutions. And I think NESC is doing a great job of being a future ready leader in this model, and we're really proud to be their partner.
Thank you very much for your kind words, Rod.